Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. I see a lot of familiar faces in the room. Thank you so much for logging on. Bit of a hectic start to the week, so I appreciate you dedicating your 10 to 11 a.m. to spending some time with the Forbes Funds. This morning's call for community solutions is extremely important and timely, so I'm going to just jump right in. Our guest this morning is Hannah from CMU, and she'll be speaking a little bit about the Build Back Better block grant opportunity, as well as some ongoing conversations around workforce development that are really important to the nonprofit sector as a nonprofit workforce, but also as, in a lot of ways, the training capacity for other kind of spokes of the economy. So as you know, these calls were started back in March of 2020 in a space to share resources and updates from the nonprofit sector, from funders, and really as a way to get point in time the best information because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And each week we ask folks who are participating in these calls to complete a brief survey to figure out, what types of topics, speakers, and different, areas of nonprofit work or adjacent sectors we should really be diving into. And each week, the consensus is that we should continue to have these conversations on a weekly, at least basis. So I want to again thank everyone for helping us keep a pulse on what's happening in the sector and social impact work in general, but also to being so attentive and willing to jump in and iterate with us. As you know, our three frameworks that we use at the Forbes Funds are the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the social determinants of health, and the 8Rs metrics. Basically, these are a way to help us better align our work and the work of our partners to make sure that we're using similar language, but also swimming in the same direction, if you will, on how we get to those objectives and outcomes. So with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, this is a global framework that has really, and at least the Forbes Funds experience, put Pittsburgh on the map in a lot of global relationships. For social determinants of health, we see this one a little bit more frequently, at least regionally, as a way to talk about the impact of our work. And especially when it comes to things like education, healthcare, economic stability, and advocacy conversations that I have with GPNP, it's really helpful to put things in context of policy issues and social issues being completely intersectional, because you can't have quality healthcare and accessible healthcare without economic stability, and vice versa for the other determinants. The 8Rs are how we get to that space. So as we are working to reduce inequalities, improve education access and quality, are we leveraging our assets, investments, policy change, relationships with each other to be able to do that work? Dr. Hannah on our team has written a lot about the 8 returns framework, so please feel free to reach out if you have any other questions. Since that's something that was created by the Forbes Funds. For our guest speaker this morning, I'll let Hannah introduce herself, but basically this is a conversation that is part of the Southwest Pennsylvania New Economy Collaborative, and the Block Center is at CMU and playing a central role in establishing a highly coordinated regional upskilling system serving regional robotics, advanced manufacturing fields, and opening up a range of training options outside of the traditional 4-year and advanced degree programs, ensuring that they evolve beyond industry needs. So a lot of the future facing language that you see in this summary is really possible because of the folks like you who are showing up for these conversations and helping to plan and respond in a way that really puts everyone in our region at the table. So with that, I'm going to pause briefly and turn it over to Fred, since Hannah, being our guest this morning, was through a meeting of his to provide some context and really, set the stage for the conversation this morning. Fred.
Good morning, everybody. It's great to be on. Happy Monday. Please get your walk in early. It's going to be in the mid-90s today, so health as well. I'm excited to have Hannah on and her team from the Block Center. I had a great opportunity to get a deeper dive into the group and its focus, in particular, the work we've done on the Appalachian Trail work, Build Back Better plan, a number of plans over the last few years that were critical to building green infrastructure within the Southwestern PA corridor, in particular partnerships with West Virginia, Kentucky, and Ohio have been critical conversations we've had over the past 4 or 5 years. And so the work that the Block Center is doing and Hannah will share with you is critical because so much of our work, when we start talking about workforce development, runs the spectrum from construction support to manufacturing support, technology. This focal on robotics is critical, and one of the reasons that we're highly interested in this work is what is the bridge and nexus for the communities we serve to be more participatory in this work, and how are we using and optimizing Skill Builder IO, EOS, or Entrepreneur Operating System in a way that this Build Back Better resource through Hannah and her team could be catalytic to really transform organizations and the communities that they serve. And so I'm excited about that opportunity. Change moves at the speed of trust. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Notwithstanding, even when these opportunities present themselves, work has to be done. And we have to position ourselves to take advantage of the emerging opportunities. So we're happy to have Hannah talk us through and walk us through what that might look like, what some of the emerging practices have been that have been successful, and what is the process by which we as groups of the community can really ascertain the assets being offered. The last thing I'll say is several months ago, I was in Philadelphia and met with some folks from the EPA and DEP. We hosted a meeting many months ago. We had around 60 plus community stakeholders at that meeting with a similar focus. And so I'm excited to bring this back full circle as a way to really garner that original focal point and to tie us to the work that's being done in the region. So thank you all for being on, and I look forward to the presentation today.
Thanks, Fred. Hannah, the floor is yours. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Great. I am so excited to be talking to you all today. We met with Fred and the Forbes Funds team last week to discuss this partnership between the Block Center and CMU and the Forbes Funds broader team to make sure that our work is spanning the whole of the region and that lots of folks are involved in this conversation, not just certain heavy hitters that are prominent in these conversations. We want to involve all types of organizations and groups. And so I'm so excited to talk to you today. I have a presentation here talking about a particular program of ours called the Build Back Better Regional Challenge. The Block Center has been tasked with overseeing Carnegie Mellon's role in this project. And so we wanted to share this funding opportunity with this group in hopes that you will apply or share this opportunity with your network. And so we're getting a very broad range of applicants who can use these funds to bolster upskilling projects in the Southwest PA region. So briefly, a little bit about the Block Center. We are housed in Carnegie Mellon, and we span the entire university. And our focus is really on the intersection of technology and society in all ways and forms. A lot of that takes place in the future of work space. We want to make sure that as the region is growing and new technology is coming into the workforce, we are helping train and bolster folks that are already here that were maybe involved in coal and steel back in the day so they can keep up with this ever-changing workforce. But we also do work in the responsible AI fields. And my particular focus of work is the community action arm of the Block Center. So really taking research at the university and applying it to real communities in the Southwest PA region and beyond. So we were established in 2019. We have faculty members that are associated with the center at the university that are then connected to the community. And our mission is really to examine how technology will impact society and ensure that we're doing that in an equitable way that is not leaving behind any people in the region and beyond. So about Build Back Better. The Department of Commerce awarded $63 million about to 30 regional partners, including CMU and the Block Center. I have two colleagues on the call from the Southwest PA New Economy Collaborative, Tamina and Jackie, who are here to answer any questions about the broader Build Back Better initiative. There are 5 projects under Build Back Better, but the one that the Block Center is contributing to is this Project 3 involving upskilling. And so the goal of the upskilling path is to establish inclusive career pathways, preparing new and existing workers to thrive, particularly in the robotics, manufacturing, and autonomy spaces through training, placement, and wraparound services. And so we can talk more about what that means later. But just know there are broad projects, and if one of these other projects 1 through 5 seem like they are a good fit with your group, please connect with me and I can get you connected with the appropriate folks to bolster your projects there. So the Block Center's specific request for proposals, we fund community organizations and university researchers leading work in upskilling and training in robotics, manufacturing, or an adjacent industry. I want to highlight that you may be doing work that's not particularly in robotics and manufacturing, but maybe you want to expand your project work into these industries, and this Build Back Better grant opportunity is a good opportunity to do that and really seed your project in a new industry. So if you're confused about whether or not your project or your work may be applicable, please reach out and I'm happy to confirm or deny, and we can talk about other ways that you can get involved in this collaborative. We expect to give 7 to 12 grants, ranging from $60,000 to over $100,000 each. So this grant is really designed to seed a project so that it can grow and expand and build capacity for organizations that may not have had the resources in the past. Eligible recipients of the grant funds are public or private nonprofit organizations, institutions of higher education, or labor unions that are registered as nonprofits. And so it's a pretty broad pool of potential applicants. There are a couple of stipulations. You must be active within the 11 county region in which Build Back Better is designed to serve. Again, you may not be housed within the 11 county region, but if your work involves people, places, projects within this 11 county region, you still may be eligible for the grant. So again, please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about whether or not your program or project may be included in this area and scope of work. And then we do have a few groups that are ineligible due to this being a federal grant from the EDA. There are some things we don't have control over. So K through 12 public and private educators and for-profit entities are not eligible for funding through Build Back Better. However, if you are a nonprofit that does work with K through 12 public institutions, that is still eligible, and we can work together to figure out how your project may fit the scope of this particular grant. Some more logistic information here. Some things that the grant can help fund include curriculum development. So if you have a program or a project that is not yet hitting the ground, it's not yet in its pilot stage, but you want the time, space, and funds to develop a program or curriculum that you think would be helpful for upskilling folks in the region in robotics and manufacturing, this is a great opportunity for you, and I highly encourage you to apply. You can use this money for salary support if you're bringing on consultants or other staff working on your program or project. Again, consultants or students. You can purchase education technology. We have a current grantee that's purchasing a robotic arm in a community college to teach people how to use this arm. And so think big in terms of things that this grant could provide. The facilities cost as well. And then we do fund wraparound services. And so if you're hoping to bring in people to be trained or participate in a program, you can use this funding for childcare costs or transportation subsidy or something that would allow more people to attend your program or project. We want to make sure that all sorts of people can participate, not just the ones who have specific resources, or we don't want to exclude anyone that may be under-resourced. If you have more questions about certain allowable costs, there's more details in the request for proposal and also the federal government's uniform guidance. It's very fancy, hard to sort through. So again, please contact me if you have questions. Okay, here are some things that the review committee is going to be looking for when we are reviewing these applications that come in. First and foremost, we really want to focus on removing barriers to access and success for underrepresented and underfunded groups and marginalized populations. So this means Black workers, people of color, women and non-binary folks, those who are in coal-impacted communities, low-income residents, rural residents. We really want to remove barriers for these groups of people so that they can participate in our economy and further bolster their workforce development. We are interested in looking at potential impact on job placement and upskilling, particularly in the region. So this could look like reporting on number of people trained from your program or project, or number of people placed in jobs after the program if you have a particular partnership with an employer. Also looking at the robustness of your recent engagement with employers and looking at how you're implementing employment needs into your program. And so the review committee really just wants to make sure that the program or project is focused and relevant to the current needs of our region, so that the program can hit the ground running and ensure that we're moving forward in the region. There are some logistic factors like the composition of your team and partnership. We want to make sure that once the grant funds are disseminated, you can go ahead and get started on your project without other administrative barriers. And then we're looking for the potential for program longevity beyond the period of performance. So we're giving this money, but we hope that the program or project can continue to grow after the 12 months of the project is complete. Okay, there are 3 components to the application. There are the administrative details found on the application portal, which I'm going to walk you through. There's the project narrative document where you'll talk more in detail about the different components of your project, the outcomes, the description, etc. And then you'll also submit a budget document that outlines personnel costs, operating expenses, indirect costs, etc. I'm going to walk you through all these. So the project narrative document that I was just referring to, there are different components to this application. We want to learn more about your project. We want to hear the overview, the thesis of what you hope to accomplish via your project. We want to know what outcomes you're going to be tracking. These need to be measurable outcomes. And so again, this might look like number of people trained. This might look like X dollars in transportation subsidy to reduce barriers for access to X group of people. We just want to see the different outcomes that you're going to be tracking and how they relate back to the goals of Build Back Better in your project. We want to know about your engagement with employers in the region or other partnerships that you have. Appropriate here is also to talk about your plan for engaging employers. Maybe you're not engaging them yet, but through the project, you're hoping to use the funds to give capacity to engage with these employers and learn more about what their needs are, or partner with them for a program or an apprenticeship of some sort. We want to know how you're going to recruit people to participate in your program or project. We want to know, are you building on a new project? Is it a novel project, or are you building on a project that you've done in the past? Both are great. We just want to know more about the situation so that we can assess how the funds are going to help increase the program's reach. If you are a university faculty or a researcher, we ask that you talk about the current state of research and the questions that you hope to answer with this research and your plans for data collection and privacy. We want to know if you have any existing funds for the project and how the grant will bolster those funds that are already disseminated and allocated. And then again, these plans for expanding the project after the period of performance. The budget, we will ask about the personnel expenses. So if you're using the money to supplement your salaried staff, or if you're hiring on students or consultants, we just want to see a line-by-line breakdown of that. Any operating expenses you may need, indirect costs, and then the total budget. Okay, so at this point, I am going to go to the Block Center's website and walk you through the application portal and the different application components. So here is the Block Center's homepage. If you look up Block Center, CMU, it should pop up. Once you're on the homepage, you're going to click Seeding Societal Futures, which is the program that Build Back Better is housed under. I'm the program manager of Seeding Societal Futures. And then once you're on the Seeding Societal Futures page, you're going to click over on the side here, Build Back Better. And here's all the information that I'm covering and more. There's lots of information here. This is really the online request for proposals with all the detailed information. So over here on the side, this is a recording of this exact presentation that I did a few weeks back. I know that the Forbes Funds is going to have it posted to YouTube as well. So if you need to refer back to this conversation, please do that. Here you can learn more about the Southwest PA New Economy Collaborative that is heading up the Project 3 and all of Build Back Better. And here's where you can find details about the request for proposal. So we're talking about the issues, eligible recipients, allowable costs, which I just talked about. Here is where you will actually submit your proposal. And the deadline for this proposal is July 31st, which we realize is right around the corner. We'll talk more about what that means for you all in a moment. But if you click on this link, it will take you to the application portal to submit your proposal. So first and last name, email, project title, and here's where you'll submit the project narrative document and the budget document, as well as any other supplemental documents you'd want to include. Maybe you have a report that the program was based around that you want to include, just to give the committee more context on your project. So if you scroll down a bit, there's a timeline. Here's where you'll find the project narrative questions that I just ran through: the description, the outcomes, engagement with employers. Here is the link to download the template. So it will take you to this page. Here, this is an editable PDF, so you'll download this to your computer. Let's see if it will work. You'll download the document to your computer, and then you'll change it so that it's no longer the template, but it's your specific document. And then these blue boxes, you can click in them, type in them, and then submit that document back to the application portal. And so here are the project leads and any key partners you have. And then we go into the boxes where you'll input your project description, project outcomes. You'll check if your organization has capacity. You can walk through this whole document, and this is what we're going to ask for you to outline your project. If you keep scrolling down, here is where you'll find the budget template. So again, you'll open this link. You'll find the template for the budget. It's the same situation. You'll download this file to your computer so that you can edit it and change it. But here's where you'll include any personnel expenses, name, role, percent, full-time effort, benefits rates. That will all populate manually for you so that you can then put in your operating expenses and your total budget. Again, this will be downloaded, and then you'll upload this back to the application portal right here. You'll just upload the file, and then you can submit. Now we're back to the slideshow. Here are some key dates that I want to highlight for you all. We have office hours for applicants before the registration or the, proposal deadline. So please email me and I can send you the link to schedule these office hours. These are 15 to 20-minute slots where you can meet with me or our executive director, come with specific questions about whether you're eligible, whether you can partner with a different organization on this project, any questions that you have. Happy to meet with you and walk through those. If none of the office hours times works for you, we can find a different time to chat. We really want to encourage lots of people to apply, and we don't want a logistic concern to be the reason why you don't submit an application. The proposals are due July 31st at 5 p.m. We know this is a quick turnaround time, but there are a few options for participating that I'll talk about in one quick moment. After proposals are submitted, the review committee will get together and review the proposals and make decisions about who's awarded, which will be announced in September. After the awards are announced, you can begin your project ASAP. You'll work with CMU to set up invoicing procedures and other things so that we can make sure you're getting your funds. And then we'll have 3 check-ins with you all, which will probably be with me, just to make sure everything's going okay. If you're running into a barrier, we want to be a resource for you to make sure that your project is going the way you hoped it would, and that we have all sorts of different resources to help you be successful. And then target completion date will be in a year, September 2025. There is an opportunity for an extension on your project if you have something come up. Maybe your key person that was working on this project is sick or goes on maternity leave and you need additional time. We're happy to talk through those circumstances with you on a case-by-case basis. Okay, if you're not yet ready, if you're sweating, thinking, I cannot put together an application for the July 31st deadline, we understand there are some options for participation that we hope you take advantage of. 1, you could partner with another organization and produce a joint Build Back Better project for this cycle. So maybe you get together with an organization or a researcher that you know does similar work and has similar goals for workforce development and bolstering projects and programs in the region. You come together, you work together on the proposal, you outline the costs and who would be paid what in your budget, you talk about it in your narrative, and you're good to go. We would award both organizations the funds and in one project, and you could tackle the project jointly. It could be 2 or more. We just want to make sure the review committee is aware of what the situation is. So be sure to outline that in your narrative document and the budget. But that's perfectly acceptable, and we actually encourage that. The next option is you could contact the Block Center to become a standby community partner for this round of funds. So for example, we have researchers or other organizations that will apply and be awarded funds, but in the midst of their project, they'll come into a barrier. We can't reach people from Wilkinsburg. We've tried to do community meetings. It's not quite working. Do you have a community partner that's active in Wilkinsburg that we can partner with to share our program or project? And then we can look at our list of people who want to be involved but aren't necessarily ready to apply and make sure that you are connected with that partner to help roll out the program or project. The next option, you can begin brainstorming and preparing materials now for the next round of Build Back Better funding. We're going to do this exact same program in the fall of 2025 that will go into 2026. Now that is the last round of grants. We had 3 grant cycles based on the EDA funding that we received. So the next year's will be the 3rd and final, but we hope that you all apply. The option that I didn't put on here, which is, I hope, obvious. If you're ready July 31st, please apply. Please meet with me. We can get started today working on your application. And if you have a solid grasp on what you want to do, you could be ready by the 31st, and that's great. We hope that you take advantage of that. Okay, I'm wrapping up my presentation here. I'm going to run through some common frequently asked questions, and then I'm seeing some messages in the chat. Hopefully we can run through those, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. So firstly, the period of performance. After we award you the funds in September, you'll have 1 year based on the time that you start your date to finish the project. So that's around September 2025. Maybe you start in October of 24, which means you'll have a year. October of 25 is when you would anticipate ending. Again, extensions may be available in extenuating circumstances if you really cannot complete your project in the 12-month timeframe. My program trains workers for jobs in an industry different than the RFP mentions. Am I still eligible to receive funds? So due to the guidelines that came down from the EDA and the Southwest PA New Economy Collaborative, we are mostly interested in projects that train workers for robotics and advanced manufacturing industries. Again, if your program or project is not necessarily applied to these industries right now, but you want to delve into those industries, please talk with us about how you can apply your current program to a different industry in robotics and advanced manufacturing. Again, don't hesitate to reach out if you want to talk through this or confirm if your program might be eligible for this funding. If your organization is already a recipient of Build Back Better funds, can you still apply? The answer is yes. As we mentioned, there are 5 projects under Build Back Better. This is only project 3. So if your organization is involved in one of the other different projects, we are happy to fund you under project 3 as long as the project is different in some way than the other project you are getting funding for. How will awardees receive funds? So CMU will establish you as a subrecipient and a vendor in the CMU system. If you've already received funds from CMU, you're already in our system, which is great. You can hit the ground running ASAP. And funds are dispersed on a reimbursement basis. So after you spend money, you will submit an invoice and CMU will pay you back within 30 days. Now, if you don't have the money upfront to cover the cost for a reimbursement basis, you can request the money for your project upfront in an invoice, and then we can reimburse you for the project costs. Again, if you're curious about this, please reach out. How will awardees' progress be monitored? So we will meet with you at 3 points during the period of performance to make sure you're on track and you're not facing any barriers. In addition, as part of the federal reporting requirements, you will submit quarterly reports to me outlining these same things. Who are you serving? What are your barriers? What are your success stories? How many people are currently in your program? When is your program set to kick off? There's a template of questions that will be asked on a quarterly basis to make sure that you are keeping track with the program and you're staying on track. And we can meet outside of these too, but this is the minimum reporting. My organization is an eligible applicant with a relevant project, but we want to expand our project team with others from list of eligible recipients. Can you connect me with partners? So maybe you are thinking, I do want to partner with someone, but I'm not quite sure who that would be. The executive director of the Block Center, Steve, is really well connected to the Pittsburgh area, as well as the Forbes Funds, which is why we wanted to come talk with you all and get connected with the Forbes Funds, because we know that together our reach is even broader. And so we can all work together to brainstorm partners for projects if you want to pursue a partnership. We touched on this too, but my organization is not ready to apply. Will there be further opportunities? Yes, this is the second of 3 awards that the Block Center is going to do. The last one will be in the fall, summer of 2025. Okay, that concludes my presentation. Thank you all for being patient. Here is my email. I'm Hannah, and the executive director, Steve. And again, the recording of this presentation is posted to our website that I showed you on that sidebar. And you'll be able to access this presentation as well on the Forbes Funds YouTube channel and Facebook. So with that, I will stop sharing and take a look at the chat.
No worries. I can help kind of moderate that a little bit. I've been keeping an eye on it as some things have been coming through either directly to me or kind of broadly. First, I want to say thank you, because I don't see, and this might be just speaking from my experience, but many collaborative grant opportunities like this, where you have folks who you're encouraging to apply, even if they aren't ready yet, because you know they're doing good work and could partner effectively with somebody who is a little bit further on in the program development process. So I want to say just, I appreciate the level of thought and consideration this process has put into removing barriers, especially from smaller organizations that typically can't take advantage of these types of opportunities. Secondly, and I know, Tamina, you've had a couple of updates shared as comments throughout the chat. Is there anything that you wanted to add or call out from what you've shared? Because I know some of it is a little technical and I don't want to misstate anything.
Yeah, sure. So a part of the New Economy Collaborative is that we have 5 total projects, and they are very extensive. And Hannah and the Block Center, they are part of Project 3, which is the upskilling kind of initiative. And that one is the largest funded as of now from the EDA. And so there's a lot of training programs and certificate programs that are being offered by the project partners, such as we have Robert Morris University, we have Butler County Community College, Beaver County Community College, all kind of targeting all of the 11 county region. And so I posted in the chat that if anyone wants more information on it, it's a really big list that has everyone's contact information, the list of training programs and certificates being offered and everything. But if you would like a copy of that, please let me know. It's actively being updated as I get more information. But I also posted a link on the website as well for the New Economy Collaborative. And so I can't remember if Hannah, you introduced Jackie as well, but my colleague here, Jackie Erickson, who's on the call, she is currently like the federal affairs manager at the Allegheny Conference on Community Development, but handles more of the federal funding for the conference. She is also here if you have any questions as well. But that's pretty much it. I could post some more links, and I post my email, I believe, if anyone wants to reach out to me directly.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So were there any other questions that folks had that wanted to jump in? If not, I might turn it over to Fred just to kind of share a little bit about how this opportunity fits into some other things that are happening throughout the region. I mean, immediately coming to mind, I'm thinking about the Southwest Pennsylvania Regional Hub and, a lot of the workforce development conversations that have been taking place in different areas. So before we close, I do want to add that point of kind of bringing this opportunity and its relevance to some other conversations as well. Fred, can you unmute and respond to that a little bit?
I would say, first of all, thank you, Hannah, for a clear presentation. With anything that we see as an opportunity, my greatest concern is always people jumping at it, which they should. But I think the third or fourth bullet was the sustainability of the effort. Right? And so I think it would be prudent for people to consider, how do we build on what exists as good and how this resource can amplify that. And then an amplification of that, where applicable, what's the sustainability pathway and what has been demonstrated in the region as a pathway that grooms partners long term. I've been a part of workforce development work for 20 years in Pittsburgh, and there's been so much promise every year of opportunities, and honestly, they've never been fully realized. And so this opportunity with this particular focal point on marginalized people and addressing um, barriers to success is a very important pathway. But I think the challenge I always have with these opportunities when they're even clearly articulating the focal point is the chasm between those organizations that can apply and those that can is it's not an even pathway. So even when you reduce those barriers, they're not starting off at the same starting point, right? There's a deficit. And that's not meant to be disparaging. It's just a truth, right? And so how do you look at that as a factor to increase their ability to start the race at the same level? And what are some of the things that need to be thought about? And organizations that have historically managed these kind of grants and processes towards a logical conclusion. And then lastly, this is a great opportunity, but the other challenge is, what is the role of the public schools and community schools and private schools as pipelines to this opportunity? Because despite its lure for people to jump on, what are the pathways that move people from surviving to thriving? What are the pathways that extricate people from poverty? And I just want to be clear that it's not just a job. There are soft skills needed, social networks, and other things that are really, really required. And so as people think about, and they should pursue this grant, I would strongly encourage people to have a holistic approach that really looks at the integration of a multi-sectoral framework that this resource is used to aid and abet that process. And that I'm not going to say you shouldn't start anything new, but it should, if you do start something new, it should be tethered to something that has some sustainability credibility, right? Because I think what we don't want to do is be part of setting people up for failure, or this notion of here's this thing, everybody jumps on and it didn't work, because what that does is it sends a message that none of this is real. And so I would just say that it's important that whatever gets selected, whoever applies, that they're real and honest about what's possible. And this is probably the hardest part. And I think Hannah alluded to this several times. Change moves at the speed of trust. Like, if you don't have trusted partners that you're going to share stuff with and build with, this is difficult to pull off. And so I just want to be honest with people. Like, you got to come to the table with all your cards on the table for this to work. This is not a philanthropic grant that somebody's the lead and they get to do something, and it's much more complicated than that. But the complicated nature of it also presents tangible, measurable outcomes for the participant. And I think that's incredibly important to be aware of. And also, I would reverse engineer the pathways to get to success so that you're clear about, is this a good choice for us to even pursue? And if it is something worth pursuing, who besides us are great partners to help manage the load of this work? In my opinion, in doing this work for over 20-something years, these opportunities produce great energy, but it's hard to sustain that energy. And it's even harder to get people into the workforce and get them to stay in the workforce. There's a lot of challenges, even when you get to the other side. There's a lot of learning curves, soft skills that are needed, as I mentioned earlier. But because we don't have a sector that has a large technology underpinning this like the pipeline. What we have is a large technology center at the collegiate level and innovation level, but in many instances, those pathways move out of Pittsburgh once they get funded. And so there's a dichotomy. There's the illusion that we got all of these great things, and they're not illusions, they're happening, but they're not seated in Pittsburgh proper or Allegheny proper. And so this opportunity to me creates that opportunity to really build roots into something that could be transformative for the region, but it's something we've never done before. So I would just caution people, if it's something we've never done before, what's required differently for success?
Yeah, thanks, Fred. All amazing points, and we're thinking really hard about that as the broader Build Back Better Southwest PA New Economy Collaborative. Also at the Block Center, we're thinking really creatively about how we're evaluating these proposals and what needs we want to fund for creating that work and other soft skills in the region. And so I just want to underscore one of your points and give an example. You can think creatively about these grants. For example, one of our current grantees, she is a researcher at CMU, and her research is based on a growth mindset. And so she presents her growth mindset, which there are technical components to this. I am not a researcher, but essentially the nitty-gritty is you can do anything you set your mind to, and here are the steps you can take to think about your path and your future in a big way. And so that's providing some of these soft skills paired with intentional steps that you can take in the region. And I know she presents to high school students, college students at community colleges. She presents to apprenticeship programs in robotics and manufacturing. And so it still falls under Project 3, and it is certainly upskilling, but it looks a little bit different than training someone how to use a robotic arm, for example. And so please think creatively about how your work could apply. And we are excited and happy to see innovation and new ideas come through instead of doing the things that we've always done. So Jackie, I saw you had your hand up. I would love for you to jump in.
I can jump in. First off, thank you to the Forbes Fund and Emily and Fred. Hannah, fantastic presentation. You know, I'm Jackie Erickson. I'm at the Allegheny Conference and worked for the last few months with the New Economy Collaborative, but also have been a part of this robotics tech community for 10 years. This call today, as Fred speaks ground truth on what it is in Southwestern Pennsylvania, I must say is already game-changing, because over the last decade, we'll say a few decades, it's been very hard to get some of the technical folks, because robotics AI has been at a certain place beyond the campus of CMU, and everybody in the industry will say that here, and it kind of goes in different places. The purpose of the EDA funding Southwestern Pennsylvania was to create this sense of surgence into these rural areas. So when you think about partners, if you're sitting in a rural community, the White House called us a few weeks ago and says, where's your rural partners? Like Westmoreland Community College is doing fantastic work within these, within the workforce projects. IUP, Robert Morris, CCAC, Cambria County, I should say University of Pittsburgh, as well as University of Pittsburgh, Johnstown. We have a lot of maker spaces in rural counties. If you are placed in a rural county, mine workers in Green, Fayette, they have a particular training as well. We are trying to get past the usual suspects that Fred has been alluding to, because that's what we've done. It's time to change, and it's time for us to do more calls like this with people that are not on the campus at 5000 Forbes Avenue. So I just want to acknowledge that, and we appreciate so much time that you've taken. We hope that maybe a future call that we can do is go a little bit larger on the New Economy Collaborative itself, with Tamina doing a presentation on the other projects. The workforce development one, though, is the focus for the administration, for the region, and especially with this opportunity in front of us today. So I just want to thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. I appreciate it. And yes, absolutely. Tamina, I believe you guys emailed me about that, about being on an upcoming conversation. I think having kind of like a, if not quarterly, like bi-monthly kind of workforce update is something that across multiple different partners would be really helpful for folks on these calls, because these are the on average 30 to 40 folks every Monday who want to stay up to date on a particular topic. And so kind of keeping this group informed at least would make a ton of sense for us. So thank you to the three of you for joining us. Hannah, thank you for your fabulous presentation. And we will work in the next couple of hours / tomorrow morning to get the YouTube channel updated with the recording. Hannah, I'm not sure if you sent them over yet, but would you mind sending a PDF copy of your slides as well, just to kind of help that a little bit so people don't have to kind of go through the recording to view them?
Yes, I'll get that to you ASAP.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and Bree, would you mind launching the poll for this week as I kind of close us out with some policy updates? We've had a lot of updates in the past week. Looking forward to the next couple of weeks, I'll be going a little bit into more depth during our policy update time on Project 2025 and the Supreme Court decisions recently, where there are just kind of like a lot of questions about implications, particularly for folks who do very human-focused work, which is the majority of the nonprofit sector. But for this week, because we did have some pretty significant updates at the state and local level, last week, I'll be focusing there and then getting into some of those broader, more national issues as we get closer to the November election. So for this morning, starting hyperlocal, I was actually at an event this weekend where I was speaking with somebody about the Schumann Detention Center or Juvenile Detention Center and just trying to figure out, what the reopening announcement actually means. On the 10th of this month, Allegheny County Council did vote 14-1 to reject Allegheny County Executive Sarah Inamorato's picks for the board of advisors that would be at the Juvenile Detention Center level. And these folks are meant to advise on basically like the operations and actions of the center. The decision was made to reject those appointments, not because, they weren't qualified or that it wasn't really a great list of candidates, but because there are some ongoing conversations and concerns of the Allegheny County Council about what like ongoing litigation impacts are going to be. And there are more conversations that they would like to have. So effectively kind of rejecting the Juvenile Detention Center board advisor nominees is a way to really press for those conversations. So I know that the headlines were reading, reject Schumann board, but the purpose of that was really as kind of a broader strategy to have a more intentional conversation about what the reopening and operations would look like for the center. As you may recall, in 2021, the state did revoke the facility's license over a history of violations and investigations. This is clearly a very layered conversation and history for the individuals that have been impacted by those violations and investigations. This is also part of a trend that we're seeing nationally with a kind of a reorder or multiple closures of juvenile detention centers, trying to figure out what the better way of working is. And so this is not something that is unique to Pennsylvania. There have been a couple, one closed in Westmoreland County as well. And Adelphoi, which is based in Westmoreland County, is the organization that signed a $73 million contract last week to run Schumann Center. And so this is a part of a larger conversation, but I did want to add a little bit of clarity because the headlines that were shared, weren't necessarily giving the entire picture for that ongoing conversation. Secondly, Governor Shapiro did sign a telemedicine bill, which would expand access to those services for individuals. Prime sponsor was Senator Vogel, and multiple folks from across the aisle in the General Assembly pushed this bill and signed it into law to expand access to services for residents across the state, requiring insurers and managed care plan providers to pay for covered healthcare services through telemedicine. So basically, if a commercial health insurer provides something that is covered by their health service that can be performed in person, also can provide that same service via telemedicine, as long as it requires, or as long as it meets required standards, that service can be covered. So in terms of accessibility and inclusion criteria, this is a huge win for folks that need to have conversations with medical professionals and aren't necessarily able to get to those appointments in person. And the purpose of the legislation, beyond kind of general accessibility, is a particular focus for those in rural and underserved areas to deliver more services remotely. And so looking at more details in the bill, they address insurance coverage for telemedicine and ensuring that virtual visits are covered if they meet certain criteria. So you can go to the Commonwealth of PA press release site to go and learn more about what those standards or the standard of care requirements are. But again, this is a really important development. Also around at the state level, you've probably seen since June, there have been multiple small private colleges throughout the state that have been shutting down or announcing plans to shut down. A lot of them have cited specific issues that are specific to each university, but broadly there are a lot of similarities. So fewer 17 to 22-year-old college students are pursuing four-year degrees. There are economic impacts of inflation that are impacting the ability of families to pay for college. And so a lot of students are taking an alternate route or taking multiple years off. And then the impacts of that is there have been fewer application and enrollment numbers, which create a lot of financial pressure and declining enrollment for the university itself. So for the small private colleges that aren't as capable of weathering those, there have been a lot of closures announced or plans to close, over the course of the next few months prior to the beginning of next school year. Some particular colleges: Clark Summit University, PTC in Oakdale, Triangle Tech campuses, and Pittsburgh, Greensburg, and the University of Arts in Philadelphia are all kind of in this bucket of colleges. Again, similar to the juvenile detention center conversation, this is something that is not unique to the state of Pennsylvania. This is something that we're seeing much more broadly nationally, and trying to figure out what the balance between accessible education, affordable education, amid national conversations of forgiving student debt, and then that falling through, or plans to have members of nonprofit or education professions have debt forgiven that have fallen through over the last few decades. There's a lot of logistical challenges to affording a quality education. And so colleges are really scrambling to deal with that. And for a few of them, closing does make the most sense. Last year and earlier this year, we talked a lot about election reform, as this is a pretty big election year. And for Pennsylvania, there are some additional conversations that need to happen on the heels of a federal law that was passed in 2022. So I just want to go through that very briefly to help understand where we sit with current election legal challenges in Pennsylvania before the November general election. So in 2022, the Electoral Count Reform Act set a deadline for states to certify slates of presidential electors, which is December 11th. You may recall from the 2020 election that there were a lot of, along the rhetoric of stolen elections, there were a lot of recounts in specific districts, specifically in swing states. And so making sure that there is a deadline to kind of say, this is what the election count is at, and, we need to allocate resources up until that point to making sure that these numbers are fair and accurate. That deadline was established as December 11th in 2022. However, Pennsylvania doesn't have its own set of deadlines to meet that target district by district or at the individual county level, which could set the state up for potential conflict with federal law. So in Pennsylvania, election results must first be certified by the County Board of Elections, and a majority of that board could withhold their signatures from documents needed to certify a county's vote, which is what happened in the 2022 primary. And there were multiple Supreme Court cases coming out of or multiple cases that ended up going to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court on the other side of the state, in Lehigh Valley, where election certification in Pennsylvania has a multi-year history of being a touchy subject. So basically, this bill that was passed in the House on Tuesday would cement the timelines for resolving any post-election legal battles and prevent delays in finalizing the state's electoral votes. So if a voter, candidate, or party wants to challenge a decision, there is now a process that has been proposed to put that in place within 7 days. And so basically people wouldn't be able to withhold signatures or prevent the certification of that county's vote. The bill still needs to pass the Republican-controlled Senate, so it's unclear whether the Senate is going to review the bill or if Senate Republicans will support the bill. And so, especially on the heels of the attempted assassination in Butler this past weekend of former President Trump, there are a lot of eyes on not only Pennsylvania, but our processes for how we are running elections. You may recall earlier this year, I hosted a discussion on the need for ballot poll workers. There were a lot of folks that were formerly working polls on election days to help manage things. And we were, 50 some folks short. And it was a lot of folks who had been doing it for a long time. And it was, 200 some years of experience during elections that we were losing for this year's primary election. And so, again, just if there's a time that, we really need to be paying attention to these processes, not only in terms of what's happening in current events, but the policies and procedures that are in place that make those things possible. This is it in advance of the November general election. And so again, for future weeks, I'll be going more into Project 2025 updates and putting some of those specifically in the context of the nonprofit organizations whose work depends on government funding, and some of on the other side, some of President Biden's domestic policies for supporting social sector work or, government contracts that would impact nonprofits very differently. So similar to what we did with the foreign policy analysis from the debate last week or 2 weeks ago, I'll be going into some of what we can anticipate if either candidate wins the election in November for impacts on nonprofit sector from the federal funding stance and the Supreme Court decisions. But for this Friday, I do want to highlight Ime Alaquiva has a incredible film being shared this Friday at the August Wilson Center. This is a documentary that examines the historic portal between the disparities of infant mortality and the current state of maternal health orbiting Black women. Despite the undercurrents, the mission aims to give birth to a new wave of solution-driven practices. The vision is to move maternal health forward in the journey to save Black mothers and Black babies. Again, given some of the maternal and childhood health rates specific to Allegheny County, it is extremely important that this documentary is aired here. So there's a couple of details on the invitation card, 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m. For the mixer screening and panel discussion. In the chat, I'm going to add the registration link for, oh, that's not correct. Hold on, let me find this. I'm going to grab the registration link so folks can sign up. It is only $9 for tickets. $9 represents the 9 months that a woman is pregnant before giving birth, and proceeds will go to 9 organizations that champion infant mortality, a crucial sector of Black maternal health. So with that, that concludes ecosystem updates. I'll be sending some emails later today about the launch of our AI cohorts. 2.0 will begin launching August 5th, actually, for cohort 2. Cohort 3, which is the one where you can hire and train your first AI development assistant within your organization. Those will launch August 8th, and more to come there. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this morning. I'm going to stop sharing and pull the link for the Ebony Canal screening just so you have that information. And I hope you go into your week thinking about, not necessarily all of these things as heavy, because they are, but the folks on these calls every week are kind of a pseudo support system. We keep showing up every Monday, 10 to 11, to have these difficult conversations, to share really important conversations and future opportunities that are available to us in this sector in Southwest PA. And I was at a meeting on Friday where I was sharing about the balance between responsibility and privilege. So recognizing that something is a responsibility, but treating it like a privilege, especially where these conversations are concerned, is extremely important. So thank you, everyone, and I look forward to seeing you in future weeks as we continue showing for support and having important conversations. Thanks.